Welcome to the Mariah Jean Fit YouTube channel. I'm Coach Mariah. Make sure you like our videos, subscribe to our channel, and share our videos as much as possible so we can reach a broader audience. We appreciate your support and enjoy the video. Hello and welcome to another vlog and podcast by the Fit Minds podcast and Mariah Jean Fit. Coach Mariah here. So today we're going to dive into the topic, rather the question, are you a coachable client? So are you coachable? Are you somebody who we would want to work with as coaches? It's not often asked, this question, are you coachable? There are not really, a strict set of criteria that are run by clients when they come and inquire with us, and whether or not you are the right fit for a coach, for any coach. Now, this is a really good podcast for current coaches to try and scope out any sort of inquiries that they're getting and maybe have a better set of criteria to go by, maybe some questions that you can ask clients. Specifically, if you are close to being booked out, you want to be very selective with what kinds of clients you're taking on, especially their personality types or their tendencies when it comes to habits, adherence, etc. And how much work are these clients going to create for you? Are they going to be a lot more taxing than what they are beneficial? Because it's not really spoken about, but coaches, and this is for clients listening, coaches are not an endless supply of time and energy. You must understand they are not robots behind the screen, especially online coaches can be treated this way. We do not have an endless supply of energy and time for every single client, and it should be known that this should be limited per client as well. It can take a lot of energy and effort if you are not coachable, and this is probably the best way to find out whether or not you've got some work to do before you actually get a coach. So I'm going to ask a few questions, and this is probably just going to prompt some inner thoughts and dialogue with yourself. And if it's not, and if you're not able to identify maybe some red flags with yourself, you've probably got some really shitty self-awareness and you need to go away and maybe seek some professional help. There will be certain things that every single person is struggling with, given that you're looking for a coach, right? You're looking for accountability, you're looking for a plan, you might be looking for somebody to bounce ideas off, or even some encouragement and support. But if you are looking for all of those in extremes and you are expecting the person to show up beyond what they're probably capable of doing on a daily for you, then, as I said, you may need to seek out some professional help before looking at working with a coach. Coaches are not psychologists. This is one of probably the hardest lines not to cross as a coach. And I find myself often kind of just finding myself doing that as a life mentor. We almost cross that barrier. But you must remember, they're not qualified psychologists. They can't really give you any sort of mental health solid advice when it comes to from a professional standpoint, but they sure as hell can support you in your personal endeavors, and that's obviously what they're there to do, and to help encourage you and provide that accountability. But they are not the person to solve all of your past trauma, and expecting that of them would be it would be really poor form on your behalf as a client, because it's not their role. Someone else has that role, someone else has that area of specialty, and a coach is not an all-rounder. We don't do 50 people's jobs. So you wouldn't come to us for legal advice. I'm sure as hell don't come to us for advice on even things like mental health diagnosis, etc. That's something that a professional can do, and you probably should be seeing that person before you see a coach. So with that point out of the way, I'll address a couple more points because there's quite a lot. So these are the red flags that you need to look out for yourself, maybe for other people as well if they're looking at getting a coach that you know and maybe they're showing some of these signs, or even as a coach yourself, if you're looking at how do I flag and how do I pre-screen, how do I actually figure out which of my clients are going to be quality versus the ones that are probably going to wear me down and burn me out. And that is the major reason you see coaches quitting the fitness and nutrition industry is burnout. Okay, it is literally because their clients burn them out. It's because there is too much put on their heads and not enough that the clients are taking responsibility for themselves. So first of all, how adherent do you think you really can be to a set of criteria or protocol? Ask yourself, 1 out of 10, how adherent you've been in the past to being able to follow a plan if it was given to you. If you find yourself falling off the bandwagon and going back on again, and it's just like 1 week on, 1 week off, 1 week on, 1 week off, and it's just like a yo-yo diet kind of style thing. Even with your training, you might train 1 or 2 days a week, and then you don't train for ages, and then you train another day, and then you don't train for ages, and then you message your coach and you're like, I haven't been training, I'm really struggling, I just don't want to train, etc., etc. These are all actually red flags, specifically because you haven't actually tackled your attitude towards training. And it's not our job to literally chase you to get to your sessions. I have heard this a lot with clients and more recently as well. I need someone to push me and kick me up the bum. No, you don't. You need to learn how to do that yourself. Funnily enough, one of the skills of a coach is to teach their clients self-empowerment. We do not even have the capability to push you because we are not physically in your body. We can't, make you go to the gym. We can't yell at you. We can't force you to do anything. We are not your parents. We're not even close to that. When you think you need someone to motivate you and push you and drive you, I mean, sure, you could get a PT, but even that's temporary. Having somebody there to do a session with each week is probably nice for the social aspect. But if that is the only time you go to the gym or exercise, or if it's the only time you adhere to nutrition is after you've had an appointment with your nutritionist, you got a problem. You've got a problem with your own self-discipline, and that probably needs a bit of a deeper investigation than just working with a coach. Coaches are not someone who sits on the sideline and screams at you. That is obviously in a game. If you were to see a coach working have you seen it in the movies, like coaches on the side of a game, screaming out to their competitors and their team players, that's in a game. Outside of that, in practice and in training, sure, the coach is there. The coach can't be there every second of the day. Those team players have to learn how to do this by themselves, to have discipline with their nutrition, to be disciplined with turning up to practice, etc. A lot of this is actually geared by what you choose to do, and coaches can help you figure out how to get closer to making those choices every day, but they are not to lean on as a crutch. And if you find yourself repeatedly doing this year in, year out, there's an issue with your attitude, there's an issue with something that's happening on the inside. And I don't even need to be a psychologist to tell you that. I'm not, I don't have that qualification. But I can assure you, if you have issues with adherence, with sticking to a plan, and it's repeated, it's happened over and over again. I'm talking more like years on end. Everybody has trouble sticking to a plan in the beginning. But if we're looking at 6 months, a year down the track, 2 years, 3 years down the track, and you're struggling with adhering to the same thing over and over again, something needs to be said for the inner dialogue, something that's happening on the inside internally that might need extra work, as I said, from a therapist, from somebody who has a deeper understanding of even sports psychology. If you're a competitive team player and you want to get better at team sports, for example, you might need a sports psychologist, not a coach to try and push you where you should be learning to push yourself internally. So on that scale of 1 to 10, if you have low adherence, if you think, you know what, I'm really shit at sticking to a plan, I'm really shit at taking direction, I'm really just, I avoid things, I ignore things, etc. I completely put things off. It might be that you might need some help mentally before you actually then go and hire a coach to help you out with giving you protocol, for example. Because our number one struggle with clients as coaches is their adherence. It's actually not got anything to do with our skills, our skill set, our knowledge base, our connection with clients. It's actually everything to do with whether you actually do what we ask you to do. The next point is, are your goals realistic for the space of time that you've given yourself to achieve them? Discuss this with your coach. You're pretty coachable if you understand that achieving something drastic is going to take a longer period of time. You will not be coachable if you come to your coach and say, I've got 6 weeks to lose 8 kilos, making these really drastic statements. I've got a wedding in 3 months and I want to drop 20 kilos, that type of stuff. Not understanding and not actually being willing and open to discussion with your coach as to what is possible, actually feasible and healthy, and whether or not you sticking to the plan is even going to be possible for what you're trying to achieve. the level of adherence required to achieve your goals is much higher than you think it is. It's not just ticking the boxes occasionally. It's not even ticking the boxes 50%. It's not even ticking the boxes 60 or 70%. It's literally being there, showing up 90 to 95%, and the best results always come from that 99 to 100%. There are a lot of coaches out there that will say things like, it's okay if every now and then, you go out and you eat meals out and that type of stuff and you miss training sessions. That's true. It actually is okay. But the level of every now and then needs to be known, that the more frequent it is, and if you're seeing the impacts of that on what you're trying to do, then the less, the less worth it is to do those, to do those things, to fall off track, or to, I had a birthday party, I had this, I had that. And you understand that if you continue to live your life exactly the same way you did previously to having a coach, what is the point in having a coach? What is the point in having a plan? So I do believe in flexibility with lifestyle clients, but with things like competition prep and things that are very strict, and especially for sporting teams, etc. No, I don't believe in flexibility at all, because a specific goal with a specific amount of time requires 100% adherence. And outside of that, if there are mistakes made along the way, which is, yes, very normal, these need to be literally that, mistakes, not purposeful avoidance and becoming complacent. So realistic goals, obviously making sure you've got, you're listening to your coach as to what your coach is saying to you. If they're saying this is going to take this long, or I don't know how long this is going to take, I just need you to stick to the plan and then I will see how your body responds. Probably listen to your coach and don't go and try and get a second opinion from 3 or 4 different coaches, because I can assure you, if you end up going to somebody else who says it will take a shorter amount of time and they promise you that they'll drop 10 kilos in 10 weeks, you're probably going to end up on a shitty diet that you won't be able to follow for very long, and you'll probably end up binging on it, and they probably don't know what the fuck they're doing. So trust me, if you are with an educated person, a coach that knows what they're doing, is qualified, registered, insured, and not just that, they come really well recommended, if they say it's going to take a little longer, suck it up. Be patient. Understand that. Don't joke about the idea that, I'm not patient. I'm not patient. Nobody gives a shit about that. Nobody gives a shit about how patient you are. And as a coach, we get very tired of hearing, I'm not patient. Well, guess what, buddy? You got yourself into the situation. To get yourself out of it, you're going to have to be more patient. So the next point, do you receive constructive criticism well or poorly? So if you're receiving constructive criticism from a coach, it will look like we need to do a little bit more of this and a little bit less of that. We need to stick to the plan a little bit more, or maybe we need to pull this back a little bit and, make some changes here. If you're finding that every time your coach gives you a solution or is trying to help you, that you feel personally attacked, that is not on your coach, that is on you and the way that you do not receive feedback well. Now, this can be very different. Constructive criticism is very different from insults and personal attacks. If your coach is saying nasty things, if your coach is calling you names, if your coach is being manipulative, all of these things are red flags as coaches, and you probably should, part ways with that coach. If you feel like you are not being heard as a client, and if you're trying to communicate with your coach about certain things and your coach is not receiving that very well, that's very different. Constructive criticism looks a little bit like, okay, you haven't been hitting your steps this week. What can we do to improve that? You haven't been hitting your water intake. Is there any reason why you might be doing that? And if you're coming back at them with some plausible reasons, it's understandable. But if you're coming back at them with the same thing over and over again, which sounds a lot like excuses, they're probably going to pull you up on that. You are not coachable if you cannot receive constructive criticism. You're not coachable if you cannot be an adult and actually receive some sort of feedback and take it, receive it, understand how much of it is not personal, and then work with that and just work on being better. It is very simple. It is not personal. It is not emotional. Most of the time when I'm giving feedback, if not all of the time when I'm giving feedback, I never have any sort of emotion involved in what I'm saying. The feedback is out of desperation of wanting to achieve the result for the client, and getting actually probably sometimes frustrated that the client, refuses to receive it that way. So I don't often lose my cool, but sometimes I will get to a point where I will say to the client, it doesn't really matter what I say to you. You don't seem to be soaking this up. It's really important that you know that if you're not soaking up information, if you're not being willing to listen and willing to learn, and that's my next point, you probably shouldn't be having a coach. Don't just have a coach for the sake of having a coach. Can't tell you how many times I've had people sign on with me and get really excited and really G'd up in the first few weeks and yay, look at me, I've got a coach, yay. And then I don't hear from them for literally weeks at a time, and I'm chasing them up and I'm following them up. And the amount of energy that we pour into these clients are not coachable. They don't want to learn. They don't actually want to change because they're not putting the effort to do so. And communication breakdown. Obviously, if a coach is reaching out to you a lot and you're not reaching back out to them or you're not communicating with them, there is obviously some sort of avoidance going on there where, again, as I mentioned, you might need to seek some further help before actually getting a coach. So, do you find yourself blaming other people for your struggles or challenges in life? This is a massive one. I think probably the biggest red flag of all of them is the blame game. I can't tell you, again, how many times I have had people come to me and blame their previous coaches. My previous coach did this, my previous coach did that, my previous coach, and some of it doesn't actually sound that bad. Often I also see that these same types of people will point the finger at other people in their life or just random things happening in their life. This happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. And it just all of a sudden becomes this endless list of reasons why they can't do what's required that's better for their health. And the idea is that almost no matter what happens, and there are going to be some, circumstances in life where this is out of the question, but the reality check is that shit is happening every day to every single person, right? And every week and every month, and you are not exempt from this. Now, this is not to say that, people's feelings are not valid, but everybody goes through shit. Everyone goes through shit, and there is only one way to get through shit and to hit your goals and do what you want to do with your life. And it's to just go through the shit and do the thing anyway. Amazing things come from building resilience, right? Now, this isn't forgetting your feelings. This isn't going, okay, well, when I get a coach and I start a training program and I start my nutrition, I just forget about my whole life and none of it matters. It still matters. It's still happening in the background. But it's very important to understand that if you have used this excuse in the past, that this has happened, that, it could be anything, lots of things. And it slows you down or it stops you or you get stuck on it for a really long time. I've seen that too, where something will happen and they're stuck on it for weeks, months even. And this is where we see that resilience is not being built because it's still, affecting the person to the point where they can't go for walks, to the point where they can't get exercise, to the point where they can't just make themselves simple meals. Now, as I said, there's going to be lots of circumstances in life that this doesn't apply to. And I understand those extreme circumstances, and those I'm actually very forgiving of. But if you find yourself, no matter what happens in life, all of a sudden just everybody else is the problem and that you've never got any sort of input or responsibility into some things that maybe you are responsible for, again, probably need to seek some professional help from someone else who's not a coach, specifically a mental health worker. So, and it's all about attitude changes, really. Like, this is all about changing attitude, perspective, inner dialogue, etc. Again, not a psychologist, but this is something that I often feel like I have to refer outwards to people for therapy so that they can actually work around their own obstacles they're creating for themselves, even when life is happening around you and things are happening to you. And honestly, there are some things that are out of our control. It does come down to our attitude and the way that we approach things. And it's not a coach's job to constantly put you back on track with the way that you think. You actually need to have a certain level of responsibility and adherence and accountability yourself to be able to get through coaching. So, are you, on the other hand, extremely hard on yourself or super self-critical? So obviously, outside of blaming other people and, it's everyone else's responsibility and not yours, are you, on the other hand, a person who can never be satisfied? You do everything perfectly and somehow you still find a bit of a problem with what you've done, or you start to blame yourself, and it's like the opposite end of the scale. This can also be really taxing for a coach. This can be very difficult. If any coaches are listening, having someone who basically despises themselves, or even so, can never be satisfied, can never be happy, is constantly poking holes in themselves or saying they're not good enough or they need to be better, and you're saying as a coach, hey, you're fine, chill, relax. This can also be, it just draws so much energy out of a coach, because we then spend most of our time actually trying to convince you that you're doing amazing and they're really proud of you. And we're not blowing smoke up your ass. We're trying to tell you that you're doing just fine. Again, this comes back to listen to your damn coach. You're going to have a very terrible relationship with coaching and your coach specifically if you don't listen to them, if you don't trust them, if you don't understand they're there to help you, they're not there to attack you. They're not even there to pretend, they're not there to be fake. They're actually there to assist, support, guide, and get you to move forward, help you improve. That's the whole point of coaching. If you come at them thinking they're lying to you or they're just saying that you're doing amazing just because, that type of attitude will get you nowhere because you'll never be able to be satisfied. And how do you know? How can you make this judgment of yourself that you're not doing enough when you've got the exact person you've just hired saying, we're happy, we're fine, we're doing amazing? I see this with comp prep clients, lifestyle clients, a lot of people basically being incredibly hard on themselves when they're doing great. So, are you a team player? It's a partnership. Coaching is a partnership. If you are a person who likes to go solo and likes to have lots of control and autonomy over your food and your training and wants to have a say in absolutely every single thing that you do, please don't apply for coaching. It's probably one of the most annoying things is having clients apply for coaching and then come and tell you how to do your job. I have to say I am pretty understanding to a certain degree and certain level, but I put my foot down most of the time when clients try to tell me how to do my job. I've been doing this for long enough, and I certainly don't appreciate people coming in over the top of me when I'm trying to help them achieve a certain goal. So things like doing excess cardio, going behind your coach's back and not following the plan and deciding that you've got a better way of doing things, or simply sending emails like, hey, I was just thinking that I feel like this needs to happen and I need to change this and I want to eat less calories and blah, 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 blah. Why do you have a coach? Why do you have a coach? Your coach knows what you wanted to do and you told them, whether it be 3 months, 6 months ago, 3 weeks ago. And so for them, they've got tunnel vision for that. Chopping and changing that constantly and then chopping and changing what you think you should be doing based on your own bias is ridiculous. There's no point in having a coach for that exact reason. So any coaches listening to this, I'm sure you've come across this quite a few times. It is very frustrating, but if you're finding that a client is repeatedly doing this, just ask them, why are you paying me? Why are you paying me if you think you know better? So, as I mentioned previously, are you willing to learn? Closed-mindedness will not get you anywhere when trying to achieve a fitness or health goal. Okay, so again, you need to go into, especially if you're speaking to someone who is qualified in nutrition, a dietitian as well. I'm talking actually qualified. Ask them for their qualifications. Ask them if they're on the registry. That's the easiest way to find out, is to actually see if they are registered and insured. It's quite easy to do that too. But if you're speaking to a professional, sports nutritionist, a qualified trainer, about their specific thing that they have a qualification into, so it's, don't talk to a PT that doesn't have a nutrition qualification, up-to-date nutrition qualification, and don't talk to a nutritionist that doesn't have up-to-date, training. They don't have their Cert 3 and 4, they've got no idea about exercise, they don't really know how to grow muscle, they might not work with clients that, do, for example, if you want to do a bodybuilding show, they may not have any idea how to prep people into that. Don't listen to those people if they have no idea what they're talking about, and if they're trying to pretend like they do. You can usually tell the difference between someone who has experience and someone who doesn't because of their credentials, but also because of referrals and the results that they show publicly of their clients. So, if you're willing to learn, and if you're willing to, and you're open-minded, the idea of being willing to learn will actually help you as a client, because I have heard from a couple of people, I don't want to know why, I just want my coach to just give me the plan and I just want to do it mindlessly. That's a waste of your money. You're wasting your money, and if a coach doesn't want to explain why behind their protocol or why things work a certain way, that it's literally like having a teacher that's not willing to write anything on the blackboard. They just want you to read from the textbook, or not even that. They just want you to show up and do the exam, but they don't want to give you any of the content to study. So really, please understand that it is important that you're open to receiving education. Having a coach is not someone taking control of the steering wheel for you. It's actually having someone who has a diverse knowledge, who can teach and guide you, and therefore you have the tools for success for the future. A bad coach, and I will say this profoundly. I will literally yell this from mountaintops. A bad coach is not willing to teach you anything. A bad coach is not willing to teach you anything because a bad coach is afraid that if they teach you enough that you'll leave them. And that is not a good coach. That's a coach who's desperate to have clients. A good coach will be willing to answer literally almost any of your questions. And if they don't know, they'll be willing to find out and actually understand why something is happening, or help you investigate with another professional. So stop fighting learning. Stop avoiding it. It's not okay. Just because it's hard doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. And has not learning worked out for you in the past? No, right? Because if you've repeatedly gone through these journeys and literally absorbed nothing, that's on you. You keep trying to do these quick fixes and you're not actually absorbing any information. Probably get a coach who's willing to teach you. So the next point, are you respectful of somebody else's time? Whoa, this is a big red flag and probably the most common that I currently deal with. There is a certain level of understanding with time and clients. You know, there are going to be clients, some clients will use up more of your time, some clients will use up less than they probably should, and you probably encourage them to talk a little bit more or reach out a little bit more. For coaches listening, if you have clients who are not reaching out and not talking to you, I do encourage talking to them and saying, hey, it's okay, you can talk to me a little bit outside of our check-ins. You don't have to just keep everything for check-ins, and also you can be a bit more explanatory in your check-ins, because remember that not enough information is literally like starving us of air. We don't know what you're doing. We've got no idea. We're blind and we don't know what we're working with. So we can't help you if you're not talking to us and communicating with us. On the other side, the respective time, every time you message or speak to your coach, ask them a question. If you do extremely long check-ins or whatever way you communicate with your coach, imagine that there was a little timer beside you, and that with every minute that ticked by, you know, $1 or a couple of dollars was just ticking by, right? Now, some people don't understand that time is money. To coaches, it's a commodity. Now, most coaches who are very busy will literally be working 40, 50 hours a week because of the amount of communication they have to give to their clients. So when you're wondering why a fee is the way it is in a week, it's to cover the fact that we don't know how much you're going to try and talk to us. We've got no idea. And so we have to cover what we think would be a reasonable amount of time. Now, if you've noticed that you're having conversations with your coach and they might be going for an hour every day of the week, Monday to Friday, even on the weekends, maybe they've got days off. I'm meant to be having weekends off. Maybe they have said to you, and they probably will tell you what days they don't work. Stop glorifying coaches working on weekends or days off. Oh, but they should do this because their clients are their highest priority. Reality check. If they do not have time away from their work, they'll go insane. I know this personally. If I don't take time away from work, love my work, but if I don't take time for myself, I actually lose who I am. And imagine if you were asked to rock up to your job every single day, no matter what time it was, to be available to communicate with your boss, no matter what time it was. If your boss wanted to, he could just walk into your bedroom and have a chat with you whenever he wanted to. Pretty shitty, right? You're like, I can't get away from work. This fucking sucks. I don't want to work there anymore. So it begins this kind of resentment towards coaching for us as coaches. We don't want to resent our work. We love our work, right? We love it so much, sometimes we do way too much. So for a coach-client relationship, it's about not over-delivering, but also not being available all of the time and not replying all of the time, which is probably the biggest problem I see with coaches currently, is they're giving too much time away for free. So to hone this in, honestly, on both ends, as a client, be mindful of how much you're messaging your coach. Okay, if you're messaging your coach every single day for your entire coaching period, there's a problem, all right? You just got to pull that right back, all right? And it might just be that you save some of the questions you've got that aren't as urgent for your check-in. Now, on the other hand, if you're not messaging them enough, don't be afraid to reach out to them. They actually want to help you. That's why you're paying them. And for coaches, if you find particular clients are taxing your time a lot more than others, there's 2 solutions. Number 1, don't reply to them as often. Actually, there's 3. Number 1, don't reply to them as often. Make sure that you put up that barrier and that boundary and communicate the boundary to them if they're overstepping it. Number 2, communicate the boundary to them if they're overstepping it. So basically just say, hey, look, sorry, I haven't replied. It's been, I've been really busy or whatever. Or give it 24 hours, whatever you need to try and draw that time out. The third thing, if this person is taking up 6 to 7 hours of your time each week, 5 hours, 4 hours, 3 hours even, that's well over what a normal coaching fee would cover, and you need to fire them. And if they're doing repeatedly after you've told them that they're stepping over boundaries, you must fire this client. It sounds brutal, but you can't keep them, because people will often say things like, I can't afford a coach. This is a situation where a coach cannot afford a client. Okay, we cannot afford to be working for $5 an hour. And that's exactly what it ends up being. At that level of communication, talking and having a conversation with your client is not free. It costs money. So when we talk about time being money, the time you spend on social media, that's your time. That's right. That's when you could be making money. And that's when you could be doing something that is of value. So it's not like the 3 or 4 hours that we would lose to a taxing client each week. We could actually use those 2 hours somewhere else constructively, where we would be building our business, or for another client who maybe doesn't communicate as much. So the next point, yes, and understand that someone who runs a business, their time is a commodity. Every second, minute, hour counts. So be respectful, be mindful, and don't be selfish. As a client, I know it's really hard, because that's what your coach is there for, is to help you. Don't be selfish. It is a very selfish thing to put yourself in the center of somebody's universe all of the time. Okay, so especially if your coach is having to repeat themselves, with the time factor as well, if your coach is saying the same thing over and over again and you keep asking them the same question, you're wasting their time. You are costing them money. And it's a very serious thing to be doing to somebody who runs a business and who wants to work normal work hours. They do not want to be working at 8 o'clock at night because they've had to repeat themselves. So if you find that you are particularly needy or a taxing person, it might be the time to work on yourself for self-reassurance, or perhaps even rely on some support outside. If you need lots of external support, and you're not giving yourself enough internal support, maybe you need to reach out to a support network that's outside of your coaching, maybe some friends and some family, because it's important not to just have one person in your life that is supporting you. So the next point, are you willing to put the work in yourself and not expect someone else to do it all for you? So again, this goes back to the whole, don't expect your coach to rock up and train for you, to make your meals for you. I often hear with macro coaching, can I just have a meal plan? And it's like, no, because in the beginning, yes, I think meal plans can be effective to get people into the direction of eating better. Sure, because it's structured for them. That shouldn't be done forever. And I think that a meal plan is kind of like a cage, and you're putting yourself in a cage if you say, I just want a meal plan. What do you think you're going to do outside of that so that you can function in normal daily life? Like, what are you going to do after 8 to 10 weeks and you're bored of a meal plan? Oh, I just want a new meal plan. It's not about living off of a meal plan. It's not about living off convenience. It's about learning. And if, as I said, if your coach is not willing to teach you, to put the effort into doing that, to teaching how to track your own macros, to actually educate you in nutrition, if you're doing long-term coaching, a meal plan is a dumb idea. Just a meal plan for that whole time, silly idea. That literally has a complete disconnect with your coach, and you're not even grasping the opportunity to do this long term and to understand how to sustain this. Sustainability is so important. How are you going to tackle this once you've done your cut or once you've done your build? How are you going to figure out how to sustain this without a meal plan? So the next point, are you willing to take accountability and responsibility for yourself as an adult? Okay? Again, not passing the buck. Are you willing to say, yep, I fucked up. I did that thing. Sorry. Oh, shit. The amount of times I think I've had clients probably screw up and be afraid to tell me, but also too, screw up, not tell me, and then I kind of know that it's happened because things aren't adding up. Being honest and being transparent, which is one of the best things you can do with your coach. Encourage your clients to do this, coaches who are listening, and tell them, I'm not going to be mad. Okay, your coach is not going to punish you, and if they do, get rid of them. Punishment is the worst thing you can do to a client for not adhering. Like what, burpees? Oh, do 10 burpees because you didn't do the thing. That's not effective, right? Yes, there needs to be consequences for not doing something, for not adhering. The consequence is you don't get the thing you wanted, okay? The consequence for not saving money up is that you don't get to buy the thing that you want. Otherwise, you've got to spend it on a credit card and then you've got a debt. The consequences for making certain choices is that you have to sacrifice the things that you wanted in the first place. You're not going to get the thing you wanted because you didn't do anything required, or you didn't do as much as was required to achieve it. So, when it comes to accountability and responsibility, be willing to take the blame for the things you've done. Be willing to take responsibility. You don't have to beat yourself up. There's not this extreme pendulum swing from being nasty to yourself to celebrating and vice versa. It's just, I went out over the weekend and I just ate this kebab and I wasn't even thinking, and I went drinking and I did this thing. Coaches are actually more understanding than you'd realize, and they're probably more willing to just move forward from that point rather than try and dwell on it. And they want to help you figure out how to move forward from that point and become more adherent. The next point, do you coach hop? Have you had more coaches this year than you've had success with your actual goals? Oh God, this is probably going to hit really hard for quite a few people. If you have not been able to stick with a coach for more than a couple of weeks, or maybe a few months, and then you think this coach just isn't right, and then you change to another coach and you have exactly the same experience, to a certain degree, I will support the idea that some coaches aren't right for you. I'm gonna admit I'm abrasive as fuck. Like, I do not suit some people. Some people need maybe a more hardcore approach, or maybe a slightly gentler approach from their coach. I'm not sure. Maybe some people need less. Maybe they need a softer, less informative approach. Then I may not be their person if they need less information, and if they need a coach who's just going to draw them up a meal plan and not discuss anything with them, then yes, that coach is for you. I do admit that it probably does take a little bit to find the coach that is perfect for you, and sometimes it probably means having a few conversations with them before you actually start. But also, to discover whether or not a coach is right for you, again, as I mentioned, you need to find out whether you are coachable, because if you have chewed through 5 to 6 coaches, maybe even 3 coaches in a singular year, you've got to understand that it's not the coach. Because when you get to 6 coaches in a year and nobody's the right fit and they did all these things wrong and you just didn't gel well with them, you must understand that if each one of them are nutritionists, they're qualified, they're insured, they're registered, all that stuff, they've got all the knowledge behind them, and these are coming well recommended from other clients, maybe even other coaches, there are some issues that you will need to address because you're using the blame game and blaming your coaches for some internal issues that need addressing. Coaches who are listening will be able to identify with this very strongly, because we do often have clients who are not the right fit for us. I'm going to say, actually, probably not as often as maybe other coaches do, but a very small percentage of my clients and I just don't work very well together. Very small percentage. Then there is a percentage that I see that coach hop to other coaches, and within a couple of months, they've got another coach again. And I actually lose track of how many coaches they've had. The problem is them. It will always be them. And this is not putting the blame on clients, but it is a very big red flag in the coaching industry. Sometimes I wish that some clients came with a bit of a warning as to how many coaches they've been through previously before we take them on. It's a lot of effort for us to take you on, understand you, set you up, etc., etc. So that's a massive red flag. If you're coach hopping, stop doing it and maybe take some responsibility yourself. So the next point, as I mentioned, don't hire a coach, then do something completely different to what they're asking you to do. It creates a disconnect with your coach, and if you are working with an educated professional, you're going to want to bet they know what they're talking about. You don't hire a builder and tell him how to build the house step by step. Okay, so as I mentioned previously, don't tell your coach how to do their job and stop disagreeing with them constantly. Sure, challenge them on some things, ask them why if you're curious, but don't think this is an opportunity to have back and forth arguments with your coach and then not even follow what they're giving you and then be puzzled as to why you're not achieving the results you wanted to in the first place. So the next point would be, do you show traits or signs of disordered eating / punishing yourself, self-esteem issues, which possibly might need the work of a mental health professional? A lot of this stuff just comes back to the fact that you probably may need work that is outside of our scope as coaches. So if, as coaches, you see that your client is binge eating constantly, or they may be struggling with, demonizing certain food groups, or they're just not quite grasping the concept of flexible eating and balance in their diet, that they are taking really extreme measures, that they are under eating their calories on purpose, even when you've told them that they don't need to do that, and it's going to damage their body, etc., etc. If they're showing these signs, we know as professionals, we must refer them outwards. It is very difficult not to, but yourself as a client, if you know that you have a past of extensive, disordered eating patterns and behaviors, you need a psychologist or you need a dietitian who specializes in behavioral eating patterns. Some sports nutritionists do specialize in this and have the qualifications to do so, but it is very hard to tackle. Not impossible, but I do suggest seeing someone who literally specializes in eating disorders or disordered eating patterns and behaviors. And also if you've got self-esteem issues that are really deep-seated, again, mental health worker. So the next point, if you're highly argumentative and abrasive with people who are simply trying to help you, so for example, if someone just says, look, hey, I think we could try this, or, oh, okay, that struggle in your life, have you tried this? And you just want to have an argument with them and you just want to prove as to why. Oh, but I didn't do this because this way. Oh, no, it's too hard. No, I can't turn up on Monday because all of these things are happening. I'm just really overwhelmed right now. It's okay to be overwhelmed. But if someone is coming to you with some help and a solution and they're actually trying to get you to see the light and you're abrasive and argumentative and it's very difficult to get through to you, you're not coachable. You're just not coachable. You will have to change your attitude towards welcoming support and help and trying different things and different approaches in order to be coachable and to succeed at what you're trying to do. So are you expecting a lot of value for very little cost? Just be mindful that when someone runs a business, there are overhead costs, there are fees that we have to pay for lots of things like website fees and email domain fees, and the list goes on. I think per client cost, it can range between $15 and $20 per client, depending on what type of premium service that you're providing. So what we actually make from you and then tax and then GST, like we actually lose a lot of your fee to overhead costs, even though we don't have a shop front, and then we don't actually make a lot of money from you. So understanding that if you say you can't afford a coach, who is probably a reasonable price in the industry, if you do a comparison, then you can't afford a coach, and don't try and barter them down and don't disrespect them because their fee basically covers all of your setup. It actually covers all of your communication and also all of the overhead costs that are involved in their business. And there's insurance, there's registration, there's ongoing fees for apps, there's ongoing fees for storage as well, for them to store things like check-ins and results and data. If you want them to do their job properly, they're probably going to be paying money to do that and to execute it properly as a coach. So do not expect the world for a standard fee, or be willing to pay the price for their time. For extra time, you need to be willing to pay the price. So if you are taxing somebody at a higher level, you're going to want to bet they might actually ask you for more money, or especially if there's like an increased frequency in your check-ins and you want more from them, they may ask you for more money and you've got to be willing to pay it, or step back and take what you were receiving previously as their service. So this relates to one of the other points. Do you find yourself making lots of excuses as to why you can't complete a task, follow your training or nutrition? Do you look for an escape and every reason as to why your life circumstances aren't right for your journey? Reality check, life will always be difficult. As I mentioned previously, it's what you do with the situation that counts the most, and you will never achieve anything that you set your mind to if you allow setbacks to be the reason why you don't. So again, shit happens. It's a very brutal and honest way of putting it. Life can suck regularly, but it's not a reason to not treat yourself well. That is probably the core of why you need coaching, is because you're wanting to improve yourself. This can happen even when you have shit happening in your life. It's actually possible. So the next point, do you find yourself being disheartened that you have to make sacrifices to achieve your goals that you have set for yourself, and therefore simply not adhering because you feel like life isn't fair and you shouldn't miss out on social occasions? Again, reality check. You got yourself into the situation where you wanted to change and you wanted to improve yourself. And I've heard this said before, there is a certain level of sacrifice that needs to be made so that you don't sacrifice your goals. Because if you don't make some sort of sacrifice now and you want your cake and you want to eat it and you want to do all the things you did before, but you want to have the magical unicorn thing happen to your body and your mind, and you just want to look $1,000,000 and feel $1,000,000, but also eat like an asshole and drink alcohol every weekend, can you just look at that situation? Life isn't fair. You cannot have awesome, amazing things in one area and then have awesome, amazing things in the other that feel instantaneously good. It is worth it to sacrifice some social occasions, or, for example, not to ostracize yourself, but certainly to pick and choose your social occasions. If you're disheartened that you have to do that, then you can go back to the lifestyle that you had previously and achieve the same results you're achieving. That's how it is. But you sacrifice your goals. So life is about sacrifice. Sadly, we have to sacrifice some things for others. We sacrifice time daily for money, as our jobs. It's like we sacrifice things every day. It's whether or not you see value in sacrificing these very temporary moments in life to achieve the thing that you actually want. Do you find yourself constantly needing a change of stimulus with training, nutrition, thinking that it's going to be the fix for your internal issues you may have happening? Sometimes clients will use this as a distraction from something much deeper going on that needs addressing. Do you find yourself asking your coach if you can increase your calories, decrease your calories, increase your calories, decrease your calories, change your program, change your program again, adjust this? Oh, you're doing this, so you want a different goal, and every 6 weeks or 4 weeks you're flipping and changing like no tomorrow. Reality check. The problem isn't your training. It's not your nutrition. It's not even your goals, okay? In fact, it is literally the fact that you cannot sit still and you cannot stick to something and you get bored. If you find yourself using this phrase, I get bored easily, you're a red flag for a coach. We don't necessarily want to be complacent. Our goal is to get you to be adherent, support you. Yes, change things where required, but you would be surprised how little change is required to stimulus and protocol, where we probably just need to change your level of effort given, how often you're doing something, for example. So let's say you were doing it less frequently, increasing the frequency just slightly. But it's not about changing your workouts like an F45 session every week. It's not about creating this exciting variety so that you can stay interested. It's not dangling some sort of sparkly object in front of your face and making sure that I've got your attention. That's not how health and nutrition works. Health, nutrition, training, and something working and you progressing at it is sticking to it, is actually repeating it, right? And so the best kinds of clients understand that repetition will achieve an end result. That yes, you've got variety in your training program. Monday to Friday, you have different sessions, or Monday to Saturday, you have different sessions. That's your variety. But you must repeat those sessions to progress, especially if a coach is coaching something like progressive overload. It's boring, okay? But you need to make it exciting by turning up and getting excited for what you're wanting to achieve. Your excitement is for the end goal, and every day that you rock up, you're one step closer to that. If you find you're a person who gets bored easily, you're not patient, etc., the problem is you. It's not your training. It's not, how do I make everything super exciting? How do I change my scenery constantly? How do I make this something that I'm really attracted to doing? Because none of that is actually effective for achieving an end result. I'll liken it to a 100-meter sprinter. I've used this before with clients. 100-meter sprinters, Olympic sprinters, don't rock up to the track and question why they have to do the 100-meter as a practice, because that's what they're trying to get better at. So they don't rock up and say to their coach, hey coach, can we just try doing a shot put today, because I'm kind of bored of 100-meter. Of course they're going to change things up every now and then. They might go for a surf, they might do leisurely things. They want to get better at a 100-meter sprint. That's a measurable thing, right? And so to progress with that, they have to keep repeating it. And yet it's going to be boring. At some point, it will get a little bit boring and repetitive. But the excitement is the goal to do better and improve. And that is where the excitement is actually an internal process. Not constantly switching and changing up your nutrition, and not constantly switching and changing up your food, and constantly switching and changing up your training. There's a difference between changing things up because you need a little bit more variety with food. That might happen maybe once a week if you want to do a rotation, maybe once every 2 weeks, maybe it's once a month, whatever it looks like if you're getting a little bit sick of eating the same vegetables, you want to change those up, absolutely keep lots of variety in your food, but fascination with constantly changing absolutely every type of stimulus, calories down, calories up, calories down, calories up, and no actual consistency, the problem lies within. It is not the protocol. So again, that's a red flag. As a coach, when we get that constant communication from clients, I want to change this, I want to change that, I want to change this, I'm changing my goals, I want to do this, the next thing is completely different to the last, red flag. Big red flag. Because we know you're not going to be consistent with any of them. So again, probably need some help from a professional to have a little bit of a better time with mindfulness and practicing acceptance that some things take a little bit longer and that it is a good feeling to wait and to be patient and to look forward to long-term success versus short-term success and reward, because they're two very different feelings. Gratification, instant gratification versus delayed gratification. It's an interesting concept, but most of society is running off instant gratification. So the next point, remember, coaching is a two-way street. We're not here to be your parents, watch every move, micromanage you or punish you. We provide support and protocol to have you show up every single day, willing to make changes and improve. As mentioned previously, it's not our job to assume the role of a parent. Don't treat us like one. Yes, we have a connection with you, but we're not going to follow you with a wooden spoon and smack you on the bum when you've done the wrong thing. I do joke about it sometimes with my girls. I'm like a mum, and that's just a maternal side of me. But in saying that, if you fuck up, you fucked up, and I'm not gonna, run you down or anything like that. That's your job. That's your responsibility. It's not my job to pick you apart for it. So don't treat coaches like it is their job to be hard on you. And you're hard enough on yourself as it is. So it's not like, me being hard on you is going to make any difference. Before passing the blame onto your coach, have a look at what level of adherence and effort you have put in over the last few weeks, months/year, and then make an informed decision from there. Internal reflection is golden. It's amazing. It changes everything. Without beating yourself up, reflect on how much you've actually stuck to the plan and how much you've chopped and changed, or how much you've just simply made excuses as to why you couldn't do the thing, which is actually incredibly simple to do, yet complicated to do long term. So, but once you get it right, once it becomes habitual, you repeat it over and over again, it's like second nature, and this becomes a part of your life like it has for your coach. Coaches are human beings. We have a life outside of work. Respect our boundaries. Respect the relationship that you have with them, and you will always get the best out of your coach and yourself. Listen to your coach. Work with them, not against them. They're not trying to work against you. Practice honesty and loyalty with somebody if you know that they're putting in a lot of effort for you. You won't always get along well with every single coach. They won't mix well with you, maybe not. Or if it takes a couple of different coaches to find the right person for you, absolutely. But this involves a whole lot of reflecting on how much of it is actually you. But either way, if someone has come recommended, practice trust and listening to your coach before trying to argue with them, because abrasive attitudes don't work well with coaching. So, long podcast, but basically, if a lot of these things apply to you, you may not be coachable. And it may mean that you need to, if you do have a coach, you may need to take a break from coaching until you work on some of these points. If you maybe invest the money into working with a mental health care worker, coaches aren't palming you off to mental health care workers or psychologists, but it is incredibly taxing on a coach to have to work with clients who show most of these red flags, if not some of them to a higher degree. And if you are a coach and you're listening to this podcast, listen to it again and tell yourself that you don't need them, and that you can make a decision for your client and for yourself that perhaps maybe they need to seek out some professional help before starting coaching, or maybe they just need a psychologist. They don't need a coach. So if, however, you listen to this entire podcast and you decided, you know what, some of them, maybe there's some there, and maybe you're working on a few of them, good, excellent, keep your coach, stay on for coaching, or message your coach and say, hey, I appreciate you. I'm working on being more coachable. All right, that's it from me. Thanks a lot for listening, guys. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share the podcast. It helps with our exposure. Looking forward to doing another one for you soon. Thanks. Bye.